Hey guys, it's Hype Train here, this time with a video on the Deadspace Remake. The original Deadspace was a classic sci-fi horror game that came out all the way in 2008. It was developed by Visceral Games and published by EA, and was released for Xbox 360, PS3, and PC. It was a groundbreaking game for its time. The game utilized the technology at that time to make a very cinematic and immersive game that was unseen before in the survival horror genre. It had a lot of good scripted moments that really emphasized the game's horror aspects, as well as unique combat where you can target and cut off the limbs off your enemies. So the remake is developed by Motive Studios and published by EA. It released on January 27th, 2023 for Xbox Series S and X, Steam, and PS5. In this video, I'm going to review the Deadspace remake and let you know if this remake is still worth playing today. I am doing this review after my 12-hour playthrough on normal difficulty. With that said, let's go on to a review. So the Deadspace remake is not a port or a remaster. It's a remake of the original Deadspace from the ground up. It's very similar to how the Resident Evil 2 remake remade the original Resident Evil 2. This remake uses the Frostbite engine, which is an infamous engine that was used for the Battlefield games from EA. All the graphics and assets are made from the ground up, and the new graphics look amazing. The game has improved a lot of the graphical elements, such as the lighting, the animations, the shadows, the character models, volumetric fog, and much more. This game currently has some of the best graphics in any game today, and looks just as good graphically as the Callisto Protocol. The game also improved the physics and dismemberment, which was a big highlight of the original Deadspace. Combat feels better than ever. There's so much more variety in the way you can tear off the limbs off your enemies. The game makes use of SSDs on newer consoles, so there are no loading screens at all. This is to make the game a much more immersive and seamless experience. The soundtrack and sound design has been redone and is very high quality. The game reminds me of high-budget horror films like Aliens or The Thing in those aspects. Overall, the graphics and presentation really make this game feel very modern, and it reminds me of the original Deadspace when that game came out, and how it was groundbreaking with its immersion and cinematic quality. I haven't experienced too many technical issues with the game. The game runs very smoothly for the most part, and I never experienced any game crashes. There are some visual glitches here and there with clipping and the physics of dead enemy bodies. And you will need a beefy gaming rig if you want to run the game smoothly with high settings. I played this game with a GTX 1660 and had to turn down all of the special effects to get the game to run smoothly for me. From what I've read and heard from other reviews, the game seems to be a smooth experience for most people. This game is an example of a AAA game that had a good launch without massive technical issues, which is sad that this is a rarity when it comes to AAA game releases these days. In Deadspace, you play as Isaac Clarke. Isaac is an engineer sent to investigate the USG Ishimura, a planet cracker ship that's used for mining. He goes to the ship with a crew to investigate, and they find that the ship is deserted and taken over by necromorph, which are creatures that resemble alien zombies. Imagine the creatures from The Thing, and that's a good way to describe what these necromorphs are like. He discovers what happened to the ship and what the necromorphs are. He also finds out what happened to his wife, who was a scientist working inside the USG Ishimura. So the main storyline in this remake sticks close to the storyline in the original. There are a couple of key changes. Isaac Clarke has a new look, his face is completely different, and he will have voice lines this time. being voiced by Gunnar Wright, who was the voice actor for Isaac in Dead Space 2 and 3. In the original Dead Space, he did not have any voice lines at all. Isaac's wife Nicole has a completely different new look, and she looks a lot older compared to how she looked in the original Dead Space. There are new side quests that flesh out the characters of Nicole, Dr. Cross, and other side characters. The storyline was really top-notch in the original, and that doesn't change with the remake. There's quite a few amazing twists and turns throughout the storyline, and it's like a mystery where you're always guessing what is really going on behind the scenes. The audio logs also really flesh out the setting and characters. I really do miss this kind of storytelling in games. The storytelling gets to a point without overly long cutscenes and dialogue. And once again, this game is very cinematic and immersive, with scripted moments telling most of the storyline. So this game is a breath of fresh air from a lot of the modern narrative-focused games with terrible writing that feel more like bloated movies than an actual game. The gameplay loop is similar to other survival horror games like Resident Evil 4. You explore the environment, gathering items such as ammo, med packs, upgrade nodes, and credits to use as shops. There's cutscenes and scripted moments that tell the game's story and move the game forward. When you're not exploring, you're fighting against necromorph enemies. You can find power nodes which you can use at workbenches to upgrade either your suit or the various weapons you have. The upgrades include things such as more HP when upgrading your suit, or upgrading the damage and clip size for your weapons. Each weapon has a different upgrade tree, so you have to be careful with how you use your upgrades. You can reset your node upgrades, but it does cost a lot of credits to do so. There's shops where you can either sell your items for credit, or use the credit you have to buy supplies such as ammo, med packs, power nodes, and upgrades for your suit. There's puzzles in this game where you use your other abilities such as your stasis and kinesis. Stasis is where you can slow down enemies and objects, and this will help you solve a few puzzles and navigational challenges. Kinesis lets you pick up and move objects. The main use for kinesis is to grab these power cores and put them into power slots, and this will help open a previously locked door or allow you to use an elevator that was without power. It's also used for solving some of the puzzles as well. There's also circuit breakers that have various effects on the environment that are also used for a lot of the puzzles. The puzzles aren't too difficult, and I was able to get through most of them just fine. They do help make the gameplay feel more varied by changing the pace. The zero gravity sections have drastically improved from the original. You now have 360 degrees of movement. The zero gravity sections usually take place in huge environments, and it's just fun flying around and figuring out where to go. Combat in these zero gravity sections is very tense, as it can sometimes be hard to tell where enemies are coming from or where they are attacking you. The combat in this remake is better than ever. Dismembering your enemies is still a big part of combat, and you want to carefully aim your shots to conserve ammo and take the least amount of shots to kill your enemy. And you do this by shooting the limbs off, though shooting the arms or legs is more favorable. Combat still feels very intense and visceral, and you're always on the edge of your seat as you fight the necromorph, because a lot of the times they can attack you from places you never expected. Fighting groups of enemies is very tense and challenging, and you have to be smart with what weapons you use and how to use your kinesis and stasis. Combat encounters feel like combat puzzles that feel satisfying once you solve them and get through them alive. And stopping your enemies to get ammo is just as fun. Each weapon feels powerful and useful in their own way. Weapons include the plasma cutter, the pulse rifle, the flamethrower, the disc ripper, the line gun, the contact beam, and the force gun. There's a good amount of enemy variety, and each different enemy has a unique twist that require a different strategy to kill them. For example, smaller enemies might want to use the flamethrower or the pulse rifle, bigger enemies, you might want to use guns such as the contact beam or the force gun. There's only a few boss battles in the game, but the few boss battles do feel fun and challenging without being overly frustrating. They offer unique twists that change the pace of the game. There are 3 side missions in this game. These side missions unlock in various ways when you explore the environment or listen to the audio logs. These side missions do flesh out the backstory and other characters. You get to learn more about what happened to Isaac's wife, Nicole. There are also secret side areas that offer extra items. The game has 3 difficulties: easy, normal, and hard. The game uses a system called the Intensity Director that mixes up the game by changing things such as the enemy spawns and item locations. So this makes each replay a slightly different experience. The game does have a new game plus where you can carry over your upgrades. You have to beat the game on New Game Plus as well as collect all the marker fragments to get a secret ending. So for a survival horror game, it has a decent amount of replay value and side content. Here I'm going to sum up all the positives of this game. The game's graphics and presentation really make the game feel modern. It reminds me of how the original Dead Space was such a groundbreaking game with its immersion and cinematic quality. There's not a lot of technical issues with the game. The gameplay and combat is still very classic survival horror. Fighting Necromorphs still feel very tense and suspenseful as ever. The violence in this game is still there. Dismembering your enemies is just as fun as it was in the original. The atmosphere and production value of this game is reminiscent of high-budget horror movies such as Aliens or The Thing. Here I will summarize the negatives of this game. Honestly, there's really not too much negatives. It's a very linear game that's somewhat short, so don't expect 50 hours of gameplay like this was an RPG or open world game. You will need a beefy gaming rig to run this game smoothly on higher graphics settings. The game is developed with SSDs in mind, and there is a warning that having the game on a regular hard drive can cause bugs and issues. I'd say the game is worth the $60 if you have an interest in survival horror games. The game is a classic, and this remake is the best way to experience the game if you've never played the original. If you're a big fan of the original and you want to experience the game again because you played it many years ago, or maybe you don't own a copy of the original Dead Space anymore, this is going to be a good way to experience the game again. The only people who I don't recommend the game to are people with no interest in survival horror games, or people that want a long game with 30 hours plus of gameplay. Or they either have an outdated older console or gaming PC. In all, I give the Dead Space Remake a 9 out of 10. This game is a sci-fi horror classic that still holds up very well today. This remake is a good way to experience the game for modern gamers. As a big fan of the original, I was very satisfied experiencing Dead Space again with the modern production value. As I was playing through the game, this game made me realize how much I miss games from this era. The game actually made me in the mood to play other linear sci-fi games like Bioshock and Prey. I just wish that today's gaming market wasn't so overly focused on open world or very narrative focused games. Don't get me wrong, open world games are good when done right, like The Witcher 3, but there's also a lot of cookie cutter open world games with bland gameplay like the Ubisoft games. So I hope this game can convince game companies to make more of these types of games again. Anyways, if you like this video, please click on the like and subscribe button. It helps out my channel, and it helps me put out more content such as this video. Once again, my name is Hytrain, I'm signing out, and I'll see you next time.